Hello everybody, it's John here, and I'm with Violet Banks, who many of you will know, but some of you won't know, because Violet's not able to make it out to church these days. So Violet, tell us, you're not able to get to church anymore, but you've been part of Whitton Baptist Church for a long time, haven't you? Tell us, when did you first come to the church?
Well, we moved down here in '85 because John came to work with Rural Ministries. So we've been here coming up 27 years. Wow.
Now, in the way that some people in church will know about you is from the notice sheet, because if I understand correctly, you write the community prayer bit.
Yeah.
Every week, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Great. And tell me, just where do you get your inspiration from for doing that? Because every week it's different. I think you come up with some very creative prayer ideas. Where does your inspiration for that come from?
Purely from the Lord. Sometimes it's very easy, and sometimes I have to leave it to the last minute. Right. And then, wow, he just gives me something.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
I mean, sometimes it's a topical thing that's happening, and it's pretty obvious. But mostly, I'm just conscious that he guides me very clearly.
Sure. Yeah. You're obviously someone whose faith is very much alive, but you've been around long enough to have seen some good times and bad times, haven't you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your faith means to you now?
Everything, in a word. And that doesn't mean I'm on cloud nine. I've been right down in pits and slimy holes in the last few years because it's been more difficult in the early days. And I just thank God for people who prayed for me and nurtured me and instructed me and helped me to read the Bible when I didn't want to, pray aloud when I didn't want to, dragged me here, there and everywhere, nearly got breakdowns themselves, and I know that because people have told me since. Right. But those early years when God's Word was just soaking in until I reached my 20s, I suppose, early 20s. Well, I was 20 when I think it really began. I was reading the Bible, and that is the crux of it. I think that even if you're not really taking much in, it soaks in like water in a sponge. And just recently, I mean, lines of old hymns that I hated have come back to me. Yeah. There was one in particular the other day, "Oh, to be nothing, nothing, just to lie at his feet." And I used to think, oh, what a load of rubbish that is. Who wants to do that? But now I can see where God is coming from. And all that soaks in, even if you don't know. And
So you grew up in a Christian family, is that right?
No.
Okay.
No.
But you obviously grew up going to church, though, if you had these hymns inflicted on you from a young age.
When I say no, my mother was, and one lot of grandparents. I suppose I owe my beginnings to a little mission hall, which I've since discovered was a Brethren hall, when I was evacuated. Okay. And a Methodist lady the other end who took me somewhere else to see lantern slides. So, people have prayed. People in the family have prayed, and other people. And then a friend took me to Brigade, and because I went to Brigade, I had to go to Sunday school, and it just snowballed. Right. So,
Sure. So for you, was there a particular moment of conversion that you can look back to, or was it a gradual dawning, if you like?
I would say it was a gradual dawning. Except for one moment when I can remember saying, I don't think I've given everything to you, but I don't know what I'm holding back. And, you know, that's me, vague as ever. So, no, it's just been a gradual thing, really.
Yeah.
I would say more of me than... No, perhaps not. Because God's held me over the years through thick and thin, and I've known his provisions when I was single, when we were married, and all those years. So, yes, it's just been a gradual thing, but the crunch is now.
Right.
Really.
Why do you say the crunch is now?
Because I can't do what I did. It's all very well to be up for the challenge when you're young and agile and you've got all your faculties. But when you see them disappearing one by one, that's hard. When I lost the power to sing about 3 years ago, that was a real grief to me because I've always sung. So that was one thing, and the knees and the hips and the heart and the strength and then a bit of the hearing and now the eye, and that was a real challenge because I just read something challenging me to go deeper. So despite where I was and what I was, yes, I'm up for this. And 2 days later, this eye just went. And I'm now struggling with, I do appreciate that this is going to glorify you, but right at this moment, I can't see how. It is just, to me, a waste of space.
Yes. You're, forgive me for saying so, old enough to have been through plenty of good times and hard times. What is which gives you a perspective, doesn't it, on hardship and trouble? Looking back at things you have been through, do they make it easier to go through hard times now?
Oh, yes.
And if so, why? How?
Yes, they do. Particularly financially. Money's never bothered me anyway because I've grown up with family that have never had it much, so you haven't got it, you can't spend it. And it's never bothered me, quite honestly, but I have had so many instances of needing a little bit. I mean, just to say one, years and years and years ago, I needed a coat cleaned, and I left my mother to take it to the cleaners, and she, I hadn't got the money for it, and she went through the pockets just to check, and I don't know, there was exactly the amount of money that it would cost, 4 and 9pence in those days. I mean, that's just one instance, and over and over and over that's happened. Either we have the money or we have the goods, or both, or you know. But it's, you know, you've got a family and a mortgage. You don't just waft through life.
No. Tell me a little bit about the eye operation you just had.
Yes.
If you can bear to think back.
I can bear to think back because this really was just wonderful. I'm interested in all things medical, but not eyes. I have never been able. I can't put John's drops in because I can't look at them. And I'd had various things done, but now we'd come to the crunch that this was going to be a daycare for which I had to take my dressing gown. And I'm thinking, ooh, this sounds not too good. But I knew I had got to lie down, and there was mention of local anaesthetic needles. And I'm thinking, ooh.
Needles and eyes.
Needles and eyes, yes. But the consultant was the most lovely person, so reassuring. But on the day, well, in the night, I'm up with the Rennies, because I'd had cheese the night before. The day before, I'd been perfectly calm, but now it's Sunday night, and this is me. In the morning, I get a tummy upset. So I'm rushing for the loperamide. And I'm thinking, oh, goodness gracious, panic stations. But when we got there, well, before we got there, the taxi driver was so wonderful, and, you know, oh, you need an arm, and put me in the car and everything. We get there, find the place where I'm supposed to be, walk in, and this is typical of God. Not content with calming you, he'll throw in a few goodies. And a couple were sitting there, and I didn't know them, but it was a member of the Hart family in the Baptist churches, who John knew well. She was waiting for a cataract. So we sat together for a little while, and the whole department was so calm. Everybody was calm, and one of my things is that I get paranoid about there being a loo nearby, a disabled loo. One within yards of me where I sat. I mean, this is God in the nitty-gritty of life. He knows that bothers me. But obviously, they think of all these things. The nursing staff were lovely. And then the theatre team come. And they've got these lovely chairs that go into a bed. So you've no leaping on and off and struggling. It's everything is done to calm you. And I'm thinking, why was I worrying? You know, God has gone before and behind and around and thrown in a few extras. And then we go to get the anaesthetic. And you're supposed to be flat. Well, I can't breathe if I'm flat. Right. So they take great care. How far can you go, you know? And then the consultant does the thing, and there's 3 other doctors, men doctors. The consultant just says, now, this is the worst bit, but it won't be long. Well, it did hurt. I'll not deny it. It wasn't agonising pain, but I could have done without it. But one of these other doctors just got hold of my hand and held it really, really tight. It was the next day that I thought, was that God working through that man? Yes, it was. And then the laser bit was nothing really, because I couldn't feel it. Nice cup of coffee afterwards, and home we go. And in the meantime, John, who had to go to a heaving clinic.
A what?
A heaving, well, for his, it was heaving with right, people. Okay. Yeah. Just for a checkup. I thought he'd be ages. Was called way beyond anybody else and was in and out in half an hour. And you think, oh wow, you know. But then you see, this is the lovely bit I find with God. I mean, my days of up front, my days of speaking were gone and done and dusted, and that was something else I was never going to be able to do again. And God says, now, you could tell about that. And I think, you know, this is the God who has held me for, well, the verse I love in Living Bible Version is Psalm 139:16. Every day is scheduled. You've known me from the day of my birth, before my birth. And I hang on to that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Violet. If I was a cynic, imagine for a second, I might edit this bit out, but if I was a cynic, then I would I would listen to your story and I'd say, well, that's all very well, but really, it's just coincidence, isn't it? You're just you just attribute ordinary things to God. Would you? How would you? What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I've had a lot of instances in my life when I would say, well, you may think that, but I know jolly well it isn't. I'll tell you one big one. When we were going to come to Ipswich, well, before it was all clear in London, we were in London, I'd had a verse, which, okay, I know was out of context, but because I was talking to God about it, to me it wasn't. And it was, I can't even remember, I think it's in Isaiah somewhere. We were thinking about where we would be going, and it was where the sailboats are. Well, we often went by the river on holiday, but every time I looked, I thought, no, it isn't here. There wasn't any confirmation. Anyway, we came here, and we were here for years. And one day we went down by the Orwell Bridge with my daughter and son-in-law, really to look at the way it was built. We were only there a second. I was just behind them, and a voice said to me in my head, this is where the sailboats are. And I turned round, and coming down the river was a sailboat in full flight. Yeah. That was 18 years afterwards. Yeah. Now that is no coincidence. Yes. And another time, I was a bit short when the children were young, and I said to God, I really could do with a bit more money at the moment. Meaning about £5 would have been nice. We get a letter from my brother-in-law, who just sold what was a family house, divided it out. And there was this ginormous cheque. Well, that is not a coincidence.
Yeah, sure.
And you can explain things away if you like, but I'm not having any of it. I'm old enough to know that they're not all coincidences.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. And just one final question for you. If you could give a message to the perhaps younger Christians at the church, if you could say one thing to them, what would you say to them? What would be your encouragement to them?
Get soaked in the Bible and talk to God, not in prayer language, but just talk to Him about everything and anything and anywhere.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's a great answer. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.